remember this, and I remember the first time I saw him after I remembered it. Maybe we were in town for a wedding or something.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I walked up, and he's like, "Hey, cuz," he's cigarette standing outside before I could even go inside. "Hey, cuz," and I just froze. I froze. I couldn't move. And he came up to me and "How you doing?" He threw his arms around me and everything, and I was frozen and I could not move.
Mm-hmm.
And when he let go, he's like, because I wouldn't hug him back, it was kind of like, you know, went on about his business, you know. And I went inside. And so each time I encountered him after having remembered, I really went through that process.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I was completely just catatonic and could not move, and I was frozen. But I was just so angry. You know, the nerve of this guy to walk up to me and just hug me like we're cool, nothing, you know, the nerve of it, but I was still frozen. I couldn't do saying anything.
And just as you put it out your mind, he's seen you time and time after that.
Yeah.
And like,
"Hey,
you gave me a pass.
Yeah.
What's good? Why are we acting funny now?"
Exactly.
Like, you forgot it. I forgot it. I got over. Come on.
Yeah.
Let's just come.
Yeah.
And now you're going through your process.
Process was really just beginning. I mean, he had 12 years, probably almost 15 years to process it. I had just started. You know, he had 15 years to put it out of his mind, or, you know,
he didn't have to put it out of his mind.
Or move on to other children.
You took the word. Okay, so that's what I was going to say, because do you think you were not only one?
I know.
Okay.
They all know. But I wasn't the only one. We'll get back to that. I was studying law. I knew there was a statute of limitations. I didn't know if there's anything that could be done. I just figured I'd deal with it. But that didn't go so well. Right? So, but yeah, my relationship with that aunt began to deteriorate. So each time I saw him, there was always the anger internally, but externally, my reaction changed each time. And the same thing with my aunt. I would, you know, I'd speak, I'd be cordial. That was it. Until one holiday, everybody's at our house. I guess it was Thanksgiving or something. I don't know. All right. Lots of people had come up to New Jersey for some reason. And, you know, we were there. And the story comes on. I think it was some talk show. And they were interviewing the author of the book entitled "A Child Called It," and it's about a young man he was as a very young boy. He went through the foster care system and was abused in different, you know, to different levels in different ways in different homes throughout the years. And he wrote a book about being called it instead of having a name.
Okay.
And being terribly, terribly abused. Sexually as well as other ways. And of all people, my aunt says, "Well, if anyone ever did that to my child, I would just, girl, I'm in my own house." Yes. It just came out. I said, "Oh, but your sister's child, that's just fine then, right?"
At a family gathering.
In my house, you know. I had an basement apartment. So I said it. I went to my basement, slammed the door, stayed down there, and would not come back upstairs and talk to these people.
In your house.
In my house. It's like, you know what? "Oh, but your sister's child, that's just fine." There was no response, no other conversation. I went downstairs. No one came to talk to me until my mother came home. Mother came downstairs and I said, I don't know, Mom. Couldn't help it. It came out. She said something that just shit. But the sad thing about it is that no one came downstairs to say, what are you talking about?
Right. What's wrong?
What do
What's
you
going
mean?
on?
What's wrong? They sat upstairs and I suppose acted like it was never said. My mother was sent downstairs to speak with me hours later when she came home. And I don't remember how that was resolved, but you know, that's just that incident. And let's see. The next time I saw Michael, it was a funeral. And years later, let me see. I don't know, 8 years, 10, lots of years later. It was a funeral. And I said, before we even do this, is Michael there? Is Michael going to be there? Is he in town? Is he going to be there? No, he's not coming. He won't be there. Okay, I'll go.
Okay.
I went. He was not at the funeral. So I'm feeling very calm, relaxed. I'm in the car with, of all people, his sister. And I think at this point, at some point, I shared with her what he did. And she was very comforting to me, accepting of my story, and just allowed me to vent to her. So I'm now in the car with her, and she said to me, she said, you know what, this makes so much sense because, you know, when we were younger, I just never understood we used to be so close. And then, you know, and then we weren't, and I didn't really know what happened.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, well, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. And she said, wow, I never knew why we stopped being close. You live in the house with that dude, you know? But, so, we were together in her car. Walk up to the repass. Walking, I still remember this so vividly. Up the walkway, I go to approach the stairs. There are like 4 stairs. And as I'm going to enter the front door, the door flings open and Michael walks out. Hey, cuz.
We're still doing that?
We're still doing this. Because remember, he's made me angry, and I've turned all of this anger every time I see him inward, and it's just eating away at me. And then I know what I want to say, and I mean, if my mother used to say, "You're looking at me like if your eyes were bullets, I'd be dead." So really, I would give him the death stare and the evil eye and all that, but I would never have anything to say.
Right.
So I had never confronted him.
He's heard it by way of his mom.
Right. I think his mother bothered. No. No. Just still not getting it. No one is talking about this. No one.
Right. So it was only the initial, did you do this? No, that's nasty.
When I was 5.
Right.
And then again when I was 17.
Okay.
And then
that's
nothing. There's not been any discussion. So I think the only time she's ever brought it to her son was when he was 15 years old. That's it. Never brought it up since then. And no one else is talking about it. And so when I blurted all that out to my aunt when everyone was in town, the other aunt who we lived with and who my mom and she owned the house together, I then brought her in on it after everyone left, of course. No one wants to discuss it while they're there.
Right.
How uncomfortable for them.
Right. Which is why it gets to keep happening.
Exactly. So after they left, my aunt was like, so what was that you were talking about? And I'm like, oh, you don't know? Mommy didn't tell you? Nobody told you? Oh, Michael's a perv. Michael did this. At this time, I still didn't know how old I was. So I was like, I was a little kid, like maybe, I don't know, like 7, 8. I was little. But it happened a long time ago. But yeah, this is what he did. He's nasty. And he should not be around kids. And again, so then it was like my small circle of people who knew. I shared it with my mother. My mom did send me to therapy, shared it with a therapist. That was the first time I step by step relived it, and the tears and I look at my growth because I remember sitting in that therapist's office. And the first time I had to say what actually happened, I couldn't hear myself say the words. I had to put my hands over my ears and just say it like this. I couldn't say it out loud. I had to cover my ears and just blurt it out what he did. That was how I shared the first time. So Michael, the door flings open and Michael comes out. Hey, cuz. And thank God the person that is with me is someone who knew. Because this time I didn't freeze, but I turned and ran. And I just spun around and I just started walking back to the car. And he's following me. Where you going, cuz? I mean, why she acting like that? Hey, man, come on, man. I ain't seen you in so long, cuz. And I'm just like, leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Why you following? Can you just tell him to leave me alone? Just please. I went back to the car. I got in the passenger seat, closed the door, and he's standing at the window. Cuz, come on, why? And I'm just, could you please just tell him, just go away. Just tell him to please just go away. And she's like, come here, Michael. Leave her alone. Leave her alone. And he comes around to her side as she's getting into the car. Mm-hmm. She gets in the car. She closes the door. She tells him, leave her alone. Just go away. He was like, well, why? What's wrong? And she said, you know why. He didn't say another word. He walked away from that car. And I think part of my healing or challenge over the years and decades has been that I did want someone to do
protect you.
I wanted someone to do something. I wanted someone to be angry enough to attack him, embarrass him, hurt him, make him pay. Mm-hmm. It wasn't going to be me, but I wanted, now. I mean, can you do it? Somebody, And I suppose that was part of what was one of the issues that had to be handled, and then things that needed to be addressed. Was that, okay, I didn't fight for myself, but are you guys going to do it? One of you? Somebody? Anybody? Please?
And I have to say this. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about, people always say two sides to a story, right? Mm-hmm. So even if Michael was at an age where the most horrific thing he did, terrible, it still could have been met with, let's fix this. Yes. You damaged somebody, but you made an awful decision. Like, how do you come up with, this is what I'm going to do to somebody? It's awful as it is. Mm-hmm. He's a child. And now the adult, being his parent, that's aware of what he did, you have an opportunity now. Nobody wants to hear how horrible their child is. But I can tell you, each one of us walking has made a horrible decision and a mistake. Maybe not as graphic, maybe it's not as horrific as, right? Mm-hmm. But now, as a woman, one, two, as this person's mother of a child who's doing this, if you put your blinders on before that he's done it, maybe she knows, maybe she doesn't. If this was the first time, chances are he's going to do it again, because you're showing him a pattern that this is okay. I'm going to protect you. But you have the ability right now to say, listen, I don't know what you did, if you did it. You're saying you didn't, she's saying you did. But let me just make something perfectly clear. I need to make sure she's okay. That is my niece. That is my sister's daughter. Mm-hmm. And whether you did it or not, you need to know that's not acceptable. That is not okay. And I want us to sit down as a family. Right. Even if it's just us four and we discuss it with no one else, it has to be discussed. And even though this child is 5 years old and may not articulate it properly, does not want to talk about it, let's talk about it. I know this happened back then and we didn't really address it. Mm-hmm. Can we just have a sit down? Because it would have opened, you still may not ever want to deal with him, because that's how you're going to always see him. But you would have felt that support from mom and from auntie. Mm-hmm. Auntie could have got him in counseling. Mm-hmm. Sad as it is, it happens. It happens. But you need help and counseling, but so did he. Yeah. I believe your aunt cried. And she hurt because she don't want to deal with this. This is not something she wants to deal with, not my child. But at some point...
I don't think so. I think at some point I forced her to. But along the way, I don't think so.
I think your aunt, at some point, needed to say, whew, Father God, get me through this. I don't know how, but order my steps and guide me. But that phone call should have came to your mother. Let's sit down and talk.
It should have.
Let's sit down and talk.
Incidentally, this is at this funeral when Michael came toward me in the car. That day actually is when that happened. It was when the conversation happened. So he went away, and I just could not be. I couldn't get myself together. I couldn't. They took me inside the house where the repast was. They took me into a bedroom off to the side, and I still remember sitting on that bed. I was hyperventilating on this bed. Couldn't get myself together, and it was just like, okay, take her out of here. Just take her back to the house. So I left, and I couldn't get myself together. It took me away. Took me to my aunt's house, the big gathering house, and where we were staying. And it took me a long time to calm down, and they left me in the room. I went and laid down, and at some point I got up. It's funny, that bedroom, it's where a lot of this stuff happened, in my aunt's bedroom. Over the years. I came out of the room and I said, I want to talk to him. That night.
Oh, that talk.
That night, I got myself together. I said, I want to talk to him. You do? You want me to call Michael? Yes, I do. Call Michael. I want to talk to him. And my cousin, one of the daughters of the aunt that I had told where I was staying. So many aunts. I'm so sorry if this is getting convoluted.
I have a lot of aunts, I know.
But one of the daughters of the aunt where I was staying, my closest aunt, she called because she knew that if she asked him to come, he would. Your cousin would like to talk to you about some things. Are you willing to come and talk to her? Well, what about? Well, that's something that we should probably talk about when you get here. Just let me know that you're going to come. He said, okay, well, I'll come. And we all gathered. The aunties, the cousins, including his sister and his mother. And we all sat and we waited. And Michael didn't show. But
his mother and sister came?
Everybody was there. We were all waiting for Michael.
Michael didn't show up.
Michael didn't show up. But since I had gotten some strength and guts in me and decided I was ready, the discussion took place without him. And for the first time, I, a grown woman of 34, 33, 34, looked my aunt in the eye and told her what her son did to me. And she